Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest installment of our exciting, boring enterprise Nerdcast. We have a return guest with us today. It's Paul Hardy, who is well known as author of the books of About the Future and conference speaker, among many things, and regular at least former writer of the blog post on the International Editable ALV Day. So Paul, Paul, why don't you say hi to our viewers?
Hello, the world. Yes, I'm Paul Hardy. I'm English, but I'm based in Australia and have been for a long time now. And yes, I'm still going to keep up the International Editable ALV thing, even if it's the only blog that's ever on. the
We should
I-
we should talk about that too. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
something we should talk about.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sweet. And for those of you who don't know, for some reason, I'm Jelena Perfilyeva, and my co-host is always Paul Moderman. See,
Hi guys.
wave, hi, Paul. All right. Well, first of all, I'm extremely lucky today because in Russian culture, if I'm sitting between two people with the same name, it means that's a sign of great luck. So thank you,
Oh,
Paul and Paul, for bestowing
that's
great
funny.
luck upon me this nice evening and morning. So awesome. So it's a great start. And obviously, because we all do ABAP, did ABAP, gonna do ABAP probably at some point. Um, I bet ABAP will be probably the main conversation, but we all do have many other interests. So please, guys, don't hold back and feel free to jump in with any subjects that strike your fancy. So as we're recording this, SAP Sapphire just closed its doors in Orlando. So I think it might be timely to talk about like what was there or wasn't there for ABAP developers, what maybe you kind of picked up, or what grinds your gears, etc. So maybe Paul Hardy. I don't know if I should call you like Paul H and Paul M for,
You know what
for
we do?
short.
You know what we do at work?
Mhm,
So there's two guys at work named Diego.
mhm.
Diego and one guy lives in Texas and the other guy lives in Argentina.
Oh,
So we call him Diego Cowboy and Diego Gaucho because right because like in Argentina that's the word for a cowboy
yeah.
right down there. And so they started calling me Paul Farmer because I'm from Iowa in the US and that's a very
Oh,
farm and my family were all farmers and stuff like that, right? So they call me Paul Farmer. So if you want to, just call me Paul Farmer on this episode and
Paul
that's totally
Farmer,
fine.
sweet.
Yeah.
I
Awesome,
wish
awesome.
I wish I had a nickname like that, but I can't think of anything really.
Re-
Paul Eight. Right.
regular Paul and then Paul Farmer.
Just good old Paul. Yeah.
All right, awesome. All right, so Paul, regular Paul. So why don't you start as an esteemed guest?
Well, I wouldn't. I'd like to go to Tech Ed because it's
Yeah.
technical. I've never ever physically gone to the Sapphire one
Mm.
because it's
Mm,
more what I call marketing, shall
Yeah.
we say?
Yep.
yeah.
Uh,
Yep.
that is, it's more aimed at managers and what have you. But of course, I look at the announcements every day, and
Yeah.
the one I'm going to have to call out, all right, because it's just ridiculous, is the claim by the CEO Christian, whatever his name is, all right, that by the end of this year, so that is by 31st 12 2024, so less than 6 months away,
Mm.
300 million people, users, shall we say, will be interacting with SAP not by transaction codes and things like that, but just by talking to it, be it command line interface
Mm.
or maybe even speech. All right. Now, that will be, if it happened, which I've got my grave doubts, a bit of a radical change, shall we
Yeah.
say?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean that would shift it if that happened to be true. Like that would be like one of the planets just dropping out of orbit in the solar
Yeah.
system, right? It would just that would be utterly insane. I mean, you know, this I'm glad you brought up the distinction, Paul, regular Paul, of the like the marketing design of Sapphire and the like nerdy techie design of Tech Ed or as of last year the ASUG Tech Connect, those kinds of things. It also kind of when I look at that stuff too, I also interpret things as like intentions, and whether or not they can be met, the intentions also tell you something, right? So
Well,
one of the things I take from that is, up on the main stage, showing Jewel, the conversational interface, spitting out ABAP code for various enhancements and things like that. And then on Twitter and wherever else you have people like obviously picking that apart. What is interesting to me, or what is like sort of like makes me sort of like put on my battle armor a little bit, is like not so much that maybe that code is garbage, sure, whatever. But from the Sapphire perspective, that's the announcement of, this is our intention, right? Our
Mm.
intention is to, you bunch of old nerds who still do ABAP, like, we're gonna sort of push you out the door in one way or another with that stuff, right?
Yeah.
That's how I view that. Whether it happens or not, I don't know. But I view that as that's announcing the intention of that, right?
Yeah, yeah, and
to
I
be
have been sorry, Paul. In my lifetime, I have been promised communism by the year 2000. So pardon me for being very very skeptical of any promises. Not to mention flying cars. I think 2025 or so. So, but 300 million users does not equal people. That's, I think, important distinction. Even though I think even if we count like every single technical user ID that's running batch jobs or whatever, however many, I don't know, bots running there unattended or RPA, however many users, much more than like physical people using the system. But even with that, its number seems to be a little bit, I think, too optimistic. I don't know,
Insane.
but you can always, I mean, numbers, that's the thing about numbers, you can always interpret them one way or another. And we are hearing this from the company that takes SAP S/4HANA Cloud private edition and counts this as a cloud revenue. So 300 million users is a piece of cake, I guess. Yes. So sorry, Paul, you wanted to say something.
to be fair to SAP and to the CEO and all that, they're not at Sapphire. They're not speaking to their customers. They're not
Yeah.
speaking to even certainly not speaking to developers. They're speaking to the market. They're speaking to the stock market, aren't they? Wall
Yeah.
Street.
Yeah.
And so they've got to say what Wall Street wants to hear.
Yeah.
And they want to hear a load of AI nonsense. And if they don't do it, then their stock price will go through the bottom and the oracle will go to the roof. So they've got to say it, no matter if it's true or not. So
That's a good lens. That's a good lens for that. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
lens.
that's absolutely true. And as I was just picking up some fragments from the keynotes, every time I look at that, how they speak and what they say, I'm like looking around like, who are you talking to? I have like no idea what you're saying. But then they clearly not talking to me. They're clearly talking to investors. And imagine this is C-level executive of I don't know, however billion-dollar company. It's the largest German company. I think they surpassed everyone at this point. And imagine the pressure for them. You sneeze, suddenly, and your stock just goes boom for no reason. So they're like a real life implication for these folks. And I think that's probably a good lens to look at anything that's happening at Sapphire, because tech ed is, like Paul, you mentioned, it's what we are usually go to. That's what we are mostly interested in, because that's where real stuff actually happening. But let's just before we move on to more ABAP stuff, was there anything significant for ABAP developers? Did you catch anything on their like AI generated ABAP code mentioning?
I have to say, I can't say specifically, but I will talk about it in a general sense. I was on SAP mentors meeting about this very subject, right? The generated code and all that thing.
Yeah.
And I can't say it because I'm under a non-disclosure agreement. But I have to say, it was the best mentor meeting I've ever been to, ever. Right? A lot of people like Graham Robinson don't normally join in. right? Especially because the time difference is pretty
Yeah.
bad. But we were all interested and to see where are they going with this. And I was expecting, to be honest, just a little marketing hype and to be sick into a bucket, because that's usually my reaction to all this AI stuff coming out from
Yeah.
SAP.
Yeah.
They hand me the bucket, I'm going to vomit into it. Right?
Yeah.
That's my general reaction. But I have to say, right, their plans, and again, they are just plans, and they may happen and they may not. Right? But I came away thinking, you're going in the right direction. And I don't usually come away from a mentor meeting like that.
Yeah.
Usually I think you're a pack of fools. And I but this time I thought, well, all right. I don't need my bucket this time. You're actually okay. And I'll just it might be irrelevant, but it might not be. In the Brisbane SAP conference this year, that's Brisbane, Australia. They had it was mostly about AI, as you might be imagined, and they said this will be the year 2024. This will be the year of the wake-up call, meaning that this hype is going to solve all your problems. It's a silver bullet, and it's going to solve all the problems of humanity. And I said one day someone's going to realize that maybe that's not the case, and they're hoping that this year might be that year.
Yeah. Let's keep our fingers crossed.
I mean, here's the convenient thing about that is that if you open a web browser between now and the end of the year, somebody will be shouting the answer or their thoughts about that answer to that question. You won't even be able to escape it, right? Like if you go look at anything news related that roughly touches technology, you're gonna like AI is going to like enter your skull, you know what I mean, like without your permission, right on that page there. So if it does happen that way, you're gonna know it. If it doesn't happen that way, you're also gonna know it because everyone's gonna be screaming about it, right?
Yeah. Well, that actually, I wanted to show something today. So we are suddenly segueing into show and tell. It's not exactly related to AI, but I think it can help us transition maybe to many other subjects. So what happened today? Today, as it frequently happens in my age, I forgot how to do very simple thing in ABAP. So I was like, okay, well, let me just go and just Google it. And the thing I forgot is, you know how in ABAP there are string templates?
Oh, yes.
They are not some newfangled things. They have been around since like 7.3 at least. So I know there is an option to have to remove leading zeros from typical like document numbers. I just forgot how exactly to do that. So I didn't want to just blurt out like how to remove leading zeros. So I actually giving very specific requests to Google because I know there are other options which I don't need in this case. So I actually needed this specific thing, and I preserved this window to make sure that I show to you completely accurate picture of what is happening in Google and what I'm afraid, and I think Paul, you also have written about and spoke about this, may eventually happen with some, at least some of the AI things. So I think to you, Paul, and Paul, is probably clear as day that the very first, very prominently in large letters displayed answer, it's not at all what I'm looking for. It's 2008, so it was posted in 2008. It was like, yeah, probably great because string templates did not exist probably back then. So this is awesome. But then if I didn't know, I probably just would have picked it up and like, okay, well, this clearly says it does exactly the thing that that I'm looking for. Then further down,
it would work.
Exactly, it would still exactly it would still work. So it would pass all your code checks unless you're checking for like ABAP Cloud or something. Then there's a whole bunch of questions which I have no idea where are they showing them to me. What is even this like altering? So Google just like is this then dig this. This is absolutely, I'm not even, I have it opened. I looked at it. It's absolutely awful, awful post on some kind of consulting company. I normally, as a consultant, I have some, I try not to bash other consultancies because it's really unethical. But in this case, if you plan to hire this consulting company, go and look at this post. It's posted in 2021. It's absolutely horrendous. There are, in the first two paragraphs, there are 4 different things that are just totally wrong. So, or rather, don't look at it, and please don't hire consultants like this. Then, of course, another answer from 2005. So we're going like back in time. Then, and still not, I'm going down, but there is still really no clear answer to my question. Thankfully, and this is, I think, so this is maybe, I thought this was clean ABAP, but this code PAL for ABAP, but something similar. So this is more like a guideline talking about alpha in and out to handle leading zero. So I look at this, I'm like, oh yes, that's what it was. So because I knew this before, I could remember. But if maybe you didn't know, you wouldn't recognize that that's what you're looking for. So I just opened this, I looked at it. Out of curiosity, I just went down and looked at this video. Video is, I think, okay, it's slightly confusing because it's mentions some different things, not really great explanation, but it's fine. It's not wrong. Then let's see. So then I also found some kind of interesting cheat sheet. I think it was somewhere. Yeah. So here, that's actually pretty interesting. So let's take a look at this. It didn't take me, so the link didn't take me immediately there, but I think I just searched for leading zeros. But there are, in this case, actually very many pretty interesting examples that I found. I'm like, okay, I actually didn't know some of the items, some of the options were there, and yeah, in the string template. So there, let me see. Yeah, so different formats, all the lots of different options. So this is actually pretty neat, helpful stuff. Again, no like clear answer, but then I went to renewed ChatGPT, which has been recently updated. This is a free one, and unexpectedly, this actually gives me exactly the answer that I'm looking for. It shows me the syntax. I mean, Hungarian notation notwithstanding, but it's a decent example. It's good explanation. So I don't know, maybe AI is replacing our jobs, or at least replacing F1, I guess, button. Paul and Paul, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I've got to say that's very good, right?
Yeah.
Like ChatGPT, because it's giving you the correct answer.
Yeah.
Right? The reason it's doing Hungarian notation is because it's been trained to do so.
Yep.
Right? Because like most people in this world still use it, and standard SAP code is full of it.
Yep.
Right. So of course it's gonna have a look of what's out and about, and it's gonna think, well, that's if everybody's doing it, it's normal.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Now, one thing we'll have to say about ChatGPT, right, is it can do things like this. It's wonderful. Right? But it also lies.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
you can't trust what it says. As a good example, just yesterday, I got an email from some bloke, and I obviously it's somebody I didn't know his name, but he knows who I am and what have you. And he wrote a query to ChatGPT saying, "What's the best resources on UI5?" Right? And it affects Mr. Moderman here and me. Its answers were not quite right. Right? It suggested some things, right? And one of them was books on UI5, and one of them was a book called A Comprehensive UI5 Guide by Paul Moderman and Phil Cooley. Now, Phil Cooley is an SAP person, and he does know about SAP things, but he certainly wasn't one of the authors on that book.
Nope.
Right? So I don't know how
I would remember that. I would remember that. He did not do that.
Right? So that was bad enough. Just knocking out the other authors and putting a random one in. Right? But at least that book existed.
Yeah.
It does exist, but then made up one by me called like, oh, I don't know, it was called Fury and UI5, the best of both worlds. Right. How to integrate the new technologies. Those two new technologies by Paul Hardy, 2021. I wrote no such book. It would have been the sort of title I would have given it, had I written such a book, and had those two things been things you could integrate.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense at all, right?
Yeah, yeah,
UI5 is a technology, and Fury is a design guideline.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not things to integrate, are they? That's crazy, and that's Chat GPT making things up, right? So
Love
in
it.
this case, what Jelena asked, it was a technical question, and it gave the right answer. But you've got to really, really be sure, right, when you're
Yeah.
asking
Yeah.
ChatGPT, because it goes all over the place and it makes all sorts of
Mhm.
nonsense.
Yeah.
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah, I like how someone compared them to like ChatGPT and similar to politicians who just very, very, they're very sure of themselves and they just confidently blurt out something, some kind of nonsense and then just move on. And I had definitely cases where like what is this? But it's like, yeah, that's totally the thing that exists. So yeah, very yeah.
That's funny.
But it's
I like that.
but it also reminds me of maybe early days SAP community, like very early days, because of Google now showing you solved questions from early 2000s. Sometimes you end up looking at some really old post, and then I get some kind of NAM flashbacks from some very early days where some random person just would go in and as an answer just blurt out some random nonsense, and on top of that someone would just accept it for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
And then
Yep.
then it would live on to, and who knew I just think who knew in 2005 or 8 that then how many years later some kind of AI entity is gonna get trained on all of that on all of that content.
Yeah.
They are, because so much code, right, is like that. Is still people are still writing it the same way
Yeah.
they did in the year
Yeah.
2000.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
if they ask a question, they say, "This is how you do it," right? And
Yeah.
they'll put it on the internet. That's what Chat GPT gets trained on, right? And so it's self-perpetuating, shall we say.
Yeah. So Paul, regular Paul, I'm
Regular
curious
Paul, yes.
in Australia. So I know that there are definitely many in-person events going on. I would say probably more per capita, especially than in the US. Great SAP community. Australian, I think, part of mentors and SAP community has always been known for being very, very active, very knowledgeable. And with Paul Moderman, we talked sometimes about just developers in the United States, events in the United States. What is your perspective? Like, what's going on in your neck of the woods? Are there any developers left? ABAP developers left in Australia? SAP developers? And is there new generation that eventually is going to replace people like us? Are they at those events, or are they just, do they exist but nobody knows them? What would you say is the situation in Australia right now?
Well, I can tell you this: there is a lot of events that go on
Mhm.
in Australia. Very, very lucky here, as you say, low population. But there's the SAP user group has basically one conference in every capital city every year,
Yeah.
or most of the capital cities anyway, for Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, what have you. And this year we've even got a tech ed going on in Melbourne.
That's right. Yes.
Oh, wow. Wow.
First
Yeah.
time since about 2004 that there has ever been such a thing in Australia.
Lucky.
That's right. And that's amazing. I'm hoping to speak about that. And I think the only way I can get in is to somehow try and fit AI into the
Yeah.
I don't want to pay to get in. So, right, I've got to speak. All right. And the only way to speak, I'm sure, is to shove
Yeah.
find something to talk about.
Yeah.
I've got no doubts. But anyway, the point being, and you were talking about the next generation of developers, Miss Jelena, and here's a funny thing, right? There's actually SAP courses in some universities here in Australia, right? And there's I forget his name, but he was a professor at some university in Queensland or what have you, who would always give speeches at these things. And furthermore, we used to have a tech night here in Sydney, and they were trying to get students to come along to it. Right? The most people would be people like me who actually, do it for a living, shall we say? And I try and get some students along to see, like, well, it could be say, this is what you're going to turn into, all right? And maybe that would put them off, right? Make them run in the other direction.
Career shift, yeah.
But anyway, this is what it was all about, and they were also trying to get some of the students to demonstrate. They were given, like, exercises, courses to do, and to demonstrate, what they come up with and things. But the point is, I suppose it's they're being encouraged to do so, because here in Australia, SAP's got a pretty much 100% market share in all big companies, at least. All like the oil, we got the oil mining is huge here in Australia, for example, because of resources and things. But all the big oil companies have got SAP, as we know. All the mining companies have got it. In Australia, the entire government has got it. Every single government department and what have you. So if you're going into IT here in Australia, at least, right, ignoring SAP might be a foolish thing to do.
Yeah.
Because considering that if you want to go for big company, then you're going to encounter it. It's simple. So that's the thing. It's great here for in-person events, shall I say? And if you're in the SAP user group as well, it's generally free. I bet the tech ed one won't be, but the normal events are.
Yeah.
So Paul, are you seeing? So you're seeing like a fair contingent of the youths kind of following behind us older folks to occupy the eventually empty seats, I guess you might say.
Yeah, see, exactly right. As I said, there's because universities. I mean, when I went to university, they would, even though SAP existed, right? There's no way that would ever come onto any curricula.
That's so, man. I don't know that. I don't even know whether it's true, but Jelena, you and I have talked about it. Like, I don't feel that vibe here in the US. I don't feel the youth coming up behind us to occupy our eventually empty seats. I don't think it's happening here.
Yeah,
well, probably in America, you don't have the SAP don't have the 100% market share, do they?
Definitely, I mean, it's a large percentage, but
it doesn't have that 100%. You're totally right about that, for sure. But man, I mean, they have penetrated pretty well. Like, I live in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area, up in about 1.5 million or 2 million folks in the. Yeah, you've been there. And like, of the large companies who have home bases or large extension offices there, those places do run SAP. So it's a very powerful thing, depending on where you are in the market, in the US market. But I don't feel like the young folks are picking up the banner, I suppose, behind us here.
Yeah. And if they do, universities have programs here, but it's functional, mostly development wise. I'm honestly, I'm not sure what's going on there, but
just a different world over here.
Different dynamic here, definitely. But so for those who happen to maybe planning to follow our steps, or maybe for developers who are kind of looking around and they're like, oh crap, AI is coming, like what now? What do I do? What would you recommend to those people? How do they prepare for the future? What do they learn? What's a secret sauce for ABAPers who maybe have some experience in classic ABAP but want to keep getting paid essentially.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know who wants to go first.
Paul, please. I mean, you said the word future, and that's
Yeah.
a very Paul Hardy word. So, I mean, we have to let that guy go first for sure on this one.
Okay, well, here's the thing. As I said about these AI things, and that they learn from humans, it's simple as that, right? And if you don't know what you're doing, right, then it won't know what it's doing either, it being an AI model. So I still say that people being like programmers or not, should keep doing what they're doing so they know what's right. Right. So that otherwise, how do you know when the AI gives you a load of nonsense? Right. You learn to accept it. We at a conference, right, the other day in Brisbane, they had some researchers from the University of Queensland Technology University or what have you, and they were saying about a good example is like phone numbers. Right? You used to know everyone's phone number off by heart. Now you just press a button on your phone. Right? And if
Yeah.
someone asked you, what's your daughter's phone number? You wouldn't know.
No idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Because why would you? Right? Because you don't type it in. Right? You just press a button. Right? And expect the machine to do it for you. And they were saying about that. It's in all aspects, right? The more you rely on a machine to do things for you, right, the less you'll think about it. And so what if it comes up with nonsense? You wouldn't know because you're not thinking about it. So it's best if you do, right, still have the same sort of skills as you used to have, just to check on it, make sure it's doing the right thing. Because that's the whole idea of these generated code, right? Is okay. It's the idea was to generate boilerplate code and all that, but it's best to have a look, right? Because that boilerplate might be a load of old nonsense, and it especially might not be like, I don't know, performance efficient or what have you, or it could be just plain wrong, right?
Yeah.
And to tell you the best example ever of this, and it's one of the best blogs ever written on this subject by Eno Wolf, who's was an SAP mentor, maybe he still is, and he had a exercise he did for students where he had this deliberately badly written program. It was an ABAP program. It was deliberately badly written, and it was about skiing tickets, and you had different prices based on, I don't know, your sex and your whatever. And it asked you a load of questions, and it gave you a price. Right, but it was deliberately the worst written program ever written, and the students that you give it to had to work out what it did, right, just by looking at the code, not by running it. And it was difficult because it was so badly written. Then secondly, once you work out what it did, write unit tests to prove what you think. And then thirdly, once the unit tests were going, refactor it so it was readable. And the code was, instead of all over the place, spaghetti monster. Okay, that was a game to me. That was a game that, and he thought, well, let's see if ChatGPT can do it. Can it do it as well as the students? And the answer was, at first, no. It would come out with all sorts of gobbledygook, but he kept prompting it. If you give it clues, it will remember what happened. And he got it to the stage where, again, it could actually generate the unit tests. First of all, it got it completely wrong, all syntax errors everywhere. And eventually, after prompting it, boom, it came out with the test classes, local test classes and things. And again, it still didn't compile, but it got the idea. Right? And in my mind, that's a wonderful use case for it to analyze a program and then, I'm gonna do some experiments on mine locally. I was just trying it just yesterday. But the point is, you're still going to need a human at the end.
Yeah.
That is the moral of the story. It'll have a good go, and have a good crack, and it can save you a load of time. But like most things, you're never going to take the human out of the equation. You really aren't. And in order to correct it, you've got to know what the answer is.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
So what's the, like, starting out right now, starting out today, I just fell off the turnip truck and I'm like, you know what? Let's become an ABAP developer. What a great idea. Like, what does my path look like now to become that competent human to, like, shovel away the gobbledygook, shovel away the nonsense, right? Like, what's my learning journey look like now, starting right now in that world?
I've always said there's one thing that can put someone above the herd, shall we say, and it's not even very difficult, and it's not even. I've told this to people. A good example is my wife was in what was it? It was a hardware store, and they had a cafe, right? And the waiter was up to her, and she asked him, well, he was young. What are you doing? So I'm waiting here in this cafe, just to get, well, I'm at university to, spare money and all that. I said, oh, what are you doing at university? He said, I'm doing IT. All right. And I said, oh, my husband's a genius in this. And I thought, oh no.
Can you fix my printer?
Yeah.
But so anyway, the next week I did go down. He was old enough to drink, so we went down to the pub, and what have you. And again, they asked him the questions like, "How would you go forward in life?" And I said, "Well, but be it ABAP or be it any other path, it's very simple. All right, it's just to do a little bit in your spare time. That's all I say to anybody. Especially people even people who've got jobs, who've already got a job. So if you do a little bit in your spare time, all right, instead of like going home and watching Netflix or playing video games where you shoot things, right? Right. Instead of doing that, right, why not spend like even half an hour, right, having a look around, right? And a good example is, I've always said what Graham Robinson, who was a SAP mentor in Australia, said he could work 5 days a week, and charge quite a lot. But he only worked 4. Right? And the reason being, he spent 1 day a week on what he called self-improvement.
Yeah.
Just doing research here and there, like one whole day a week, where he could have been earning money. And he said that more than paid for itself.
I bet it did. I bet it did. Yeah.
Yeah, especially for for consultants, it's 80-20 probably. It's the minimum split of how you need to organize yourself. Otherwise, you're only going to be charging for that long. Eventually, SAP is going to caught up with you, even though it's amazing what this whole backwards compatibility and never discontinuing things and this shift deleting zeros things keeps dragging in 2024 still. How big damage it sometimes does. Actually, it's really great that it works, but at the same time does not discourage people. I actually want to go back to a little bit to the post question, like today, if some like not back in 2005 when I started first with SAP development, but right now, what that potential path can be. I think it's right now it's pretty difficult time because we still have not let go of ECC world, and that's probably going to be for a while. So there is still need to learn classic ABAP, just ABAP basics, some run to know how to create basic LV report. You're still gonna do that probably for some years. I know that SAP official learning website, if you go there, you look up ABAP, the only things they have, SAP, BTP, ABAP prep, start open ADT, start creating your typical wrap objects. If someone goes to average like US based SAP customer and they only know that, they will be for a rude awakening. I think how different that is with still running ECC. Latest ABAP version if they're lucky, or even some older one, or maybe even older S/4HANA versions which don't have wrap. There are some clients that still they upgraded, but like barely just and they just don't feel like they need more, so they're okay with what they have. So it's definitely, I think, creates lots of difficulties for people just entering space. They need to know essentially where exactly are they going to work. If they consciously say, okay, forget all this old stuff, I'm just simply not going to take any job that requires it, and I'm going to focus on new cutting edge stuff. That might be a problem with finding employment,
Yes.
especially in some regions. So yeah, it's still, you have to lot to learn. And it's funny, I just the other day I was describing to my non-ABAP colleague how ABAP is different from other languages. I don't really work with other programming languages, but I keep my ears open to hear what's going on. So other, let's say, technologies or platforms, it's normally goes like this. So something new gets added, but maybe something old, they just kind of give up. So they don't do this anymore. It's just falls off the wagon. So it kind of goes like slowly, maybe more like this. But with ABAP, it only goes like this. Like it only, so this part stays, and it only increases. So the scope only goes up. It never ever goes down. So we don't lose ever anything in ABAP. And that, of course, makes, I think, incredibly difficult for everyone who is just trying to become a developer. Like, what the heck is this stuff? So I don't know, Paul, if you talk to any younger developers, I don't know if you heard anything from them in this area.
I've got to say about the things getting bigger. Right?
Mhm.
When my company in Germany going through the S4 HANA preparation stage, shall we say, they engaged a vendor called SmartShift. Right now, it's all well and good. It's got, like everything, it's good and bad. The bad thing is it puts comments all throughout your code when it
Yeah.
changes things. And that means that suddenly your code is 75% comments. And that's a bad thing, in my humble opinion, because then I'd have to manually remove them all because
Yeah.
it's useful for 1 minute and then it's not useful anymore. It just
Yeah.
code, right? Because you've got little blobs of real code in the midst of thousands of comments. Right. Okay, that's a bad bit. The good bit is I looked at their list of rules and it all made sense about what they were changing automatically and why they were changing it, and it was all good. But the funny thing was there were so many keywords that I'd never heard of. Right, that they found in the code base, and they were I thought, is that a keyword? I've never used it. I've been programming for like 20 odd years. Right? And I've never seen that. So I typed it into my system to see if it would compile, and yes, it did. Right? And I thought, that's odd. And that's the thing about never taking anything away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some like a good example, like stop is an
Oh
ABAP
yeah,
keyword.
yeah.
Never
Stop.
used
Yeah.
it. I,
I've done some issues of our newsletter. I've written haiku using only ABAP keywords because I have always loved how big the ABAP keyword dictionary is. I love the wordiness of it, right? And so you can create, sometimes you don't have quite enough to make prose, but you can make some really kind of interesting little poetic haiku style, like uh utterances that are just purely comprised of ABAP keywords
exactly
that are
right.
yeah. And
And
in fact, in one of them, I used Google's Gemini AI, and I just gave it. I said, here are all of the ABAP keywords. Write me a haiku on the theme of sorrow or whatever, right? And so it spits out a haiku composed of only those keywords that somehow strings together to suggest sorrow. You know what I mean? And so I've always loved that. I loved that about ABAP, is that feeling of that.
Yeah.
But it's
Awesome.
a verbose language, which I think is a good thing, because the more that it sounds like English, the better to me.
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
that was the whole point of fourth generation languages. That is
Yeah.
why I like add one to count is better
I
than
really do.
plus
Yes.
plus
Yep.
Right, because that is
Yeah.
like George Orwell, 1984, double speak or whatever it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Right, with a plus good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're totally right. That's yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'm
so with,
I'm with you with this one.
so with again talking about how to make ABAP sound like natural language. There's some silly jokes have been done. What was it in one of the blogs that I wrote? Some guy said he called an internal table Willy, so he could write Free Willy. And of course it would compile, wouldn't it?
It's
That's
awesome.
funny.
And then
That's funny.
same way, you could write break wind,
Oh
right? And that would compile as well.
my goodness.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. Discover stuff like this with ABAP all the time. It's so
Oh,
funny. Awesome. So Paul, I wanted to make sure that we leave enough time to promote your hopefully new edition of ABAP to the
Okay.
future. I'm sitting here like what? Okay, I want to know like what is Paul gonna write about in the next edition?
yeah.
So
Absolutely.
please give us sneak
Well,
peek of what's coming up.
well, first of all, I'll tell you how I do this,
Mhm.
the guts of the thing. Even before the last edition is published, I get a spreadsheet going about changes, which I used to get from the SAP community. Nowadays, generally it comes from Twitter,
Yeah.
right?
Mm,
With links to blogs, because the SAP community is pretty much
Yeah.
unsearchable. You can't use it as a
yes.
I remember a lovely video called Jelena tries to navigate.
Post-apocalyptic world.
Yeah.
And that says it. That says everything you need to know, right? So, but luckily, Twitter knows
Yes.
what I want, right? And I get links to blogs and all that, and I make a spreadsheet with all changes, and I get the prior chapters as Word documents, and as I go, as time goes by, I keep changing them. I'm up to like from the last edition, I'm up to 135 changes now. Some really minor, some quite radical.
Mm,
All well and good. And so how it works is you like in January they say be okay, make a proposal for the next edition.
Mhm.
So I do that, and I've knocked a few chapters out, like poor old WebDimpro. No more. That goes with the dinosaurs, for
Take a
example.
seat.
Thank God.
Yep.
Yeah. Finally.
It's had its day. Even though ironically, two of my colleagues both the next week had to work on WebDimpro projects. But
Yeah. That's
SAP
SAP reality, I think. That's yeah. Yeah.
that's the way. But you shouldn't, right? It's right. But there we go. But anyway, I was looking for like new things to replace like the dead things, and unfortunately, at that stage, SAP didn't have really had anything. When I first wrote the first book, SAP had done so much in the 2 year period.
Yeah.
Right.
Right, it was easy to find a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Now, all the new stuff is community projects. The
Mm.
two I'd earmarked were like ABAP to UI5, for example, which is a community project.
Yeah.
I'm really interesting, and everything that Lars Havan Peterson does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that standalone ABAP thing, right? It's amazing.
Yeah.
I had a one-to-one video conference with him when he was demonstrating how it works and what it does, and he doesn't think it's anything special because to him it isn't. But to me, I'm thinking, bloody hell, this is amazing. Right? It compiles outside of it. It doesn't need a life support system of a server and all.
Yeah.
And it runs and all that, and you can even do unit tests. The unit tests even run outside of SAP and things, and it's absolutely amazing. I thought, well, I'm putting that in. That's really good. All right. And so I submitted my things of chapters to SAP Press, and they said, well, actually, we're going to put it on pause for 2 years. Right?
Mm.
And
Oh, really?
yeah, the reason being is because we prefer new stuff from SAP rather than new stuff from outside. I'm saying, well, there isn't any. Right?
Yeah, that's quite ironic.
And so they put it on pause until such time as there is. Now there will be, and it's going to be all AI related. It has to be.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean
Oh, yeah.
I've stopped work on it. In some ways, it good because I'm going through every chapter with a fine-tooth comb. I mentioned Jim McDonough earlier. He's again, I talk to him all the time, and that's about the ABAP laundromat and things. And he does technical reviews of my chapters, and the test-driven development one that's been rewritten from the ground up, for example. And so if when it does come out, you're going to get people are going to get their value for money because it will be trouble with second edition, the third edition. Sometimes it's only 20% different, or
Yeah.
and that's been, and I've always felt a bit guilty about that. And to be honest, I'm amazed that people have bought all four.
Right.
And I think, well, why? Right? Because it's not really different. But it's nice.
I skipped just one, but yeah, I have more than one, and it's really amazing. I really appreciate your work, Paul, because I think first of all, you actually kind of started the revolution of different style of writing in SAP world. Suddenly, people realize like, oh crap, like I can write in totally human language and not some kind of pompous consulting speak or something. Because before that, every time you look at the books, like it's very kind of
Garbage.
non-human. Yeah, so that I think opened the doors to many other people, and I still to this day I sometimes go even to the old edition to your books if I'm working with the older system. And I also appreciate your very practical perspective, because you would look at it and you're like, this is good way to do this, better way and best way, but better way means the middle might actually be the most practical one, and here are the reasons for it. And I totally agree, because I sometimes facing the same thing myself. It's like, oh, there is awesome, like super cutting edge way to do that, but there are issues with that first of all, not everyone is going to understand it immediately. Second, it's like I mean, you always try to make it easy for people to maintain versus being too cutting edge. I would always take maintainability, readability, and just pure simplicity, which is ultimate elegance. So really, yeah, really appreciate your work in your books. And
Absolutely.
I for one,
100%.
am looking forward, even if it's about community project. And yeah, I think you're totally right. So we are kind of moving on to closing time. I would love to talk for like another hour, but I think I'm gonna run out of space on my PC for recording file at this point. So let's we always try to close on good note. I think maybe some kind of final words of wisdom for our viewers would be justified, or honestly, whatever you want to, whatever message you want to
plug
put
something.
out in the world.
Plug something. Yeah.
So Paul, please, regular Paul.
Right,
Regular Paul.
right. Okay. One thing I would say to anybody listening: the two best things every year that anybody can do all around the world is these online conferences. There's one about Fiori, and it's wittily called Fiori Conf, and there's one about ABAP called ABAP Conf, and that was about 2 weeks ago this year. And I said it's completely free, and what I view it's part of it's in German, but most of it's in English.
Most of it is in ABAP.
Yeah, but sometimes my German's rubbish. Really, I can speak it to a child level, shall we say?
Yeah.
But anyway, even some of them, because I can see what's on the screen. Demonstrating things, right? And so I get the general idea. I'm just saying to everybody, watch out for the ABAP Conf next year and the Fiori conference next year. That's all I said, because all it costs you is your time.
Yeah.
All right. And it's a very useful things. That's my top tip, as it were.
Awesome. Awesome. Farmer Paul. Paul Farmer.
Uh, I would like to let me just echo because I'm big into the AI stuff. My day job these days is actually in the AI stuff and not so much, and it's sort of peripherally SAP alongside that stuff. And Paul, regular Paul, what you said earlier about the need for humans to actually understand things. I mean, I live every day inside this stuff. I write connectors for ChatGPT or whatever else to literally talk to like an SAP code base and to examine code from a real system and to, run syntax checks on what it produces and that kind of stuff. And I like I when people get the chance to see what I do, and I can't show people because I'm doing it for a client, but they're like, wow, that's really cool. And yet every time in the back of my head, and I say this to people too, is it's also cool. You still have to have like a North Star of both a goal and intelligence to guide you to what you're doing. That stuff will not magically materialize if you don't have an intention of what you want to do with what you're doing here. There's so many ways to enhance the tools and stuff, but to people who are listening to regular Paul, myself, you, Jelena, uh, it even if you think that in 2 years, Skynet is going to come and nuke us off the planet, in these 2 years between now and then, your human intelligence, your human goal setting, your human value are through the roof. The better the tools get, the more important it is for you to be bright about your intentions and sharp with your focus and determined with your goals. Like the better the tools get, the better you need to be alongside them, I think. And the way to do that is intention and focus with that stuff.
Yeah.
Very broad. I know. I'm sorry. I get that way sometimes, but yeah,
No,
that's my words of wisdom.
yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a definition of wisdom. Yes, and for myself, specifically for ABAP developers, but maybe for many other developers as well in SAP and non-SAP, I would say it may sound weird, but I would say question everything at this point, and not in a way of being stubborn or combative or anything like that, but in a way, is there a different, better, newer way to do things that I'm trying to do? And just look back at the example of my search that I did. I could have stopped at the very old-fashioned way of doing things, but I simply happen to know that there is different and arguably much better way of doing this. So don't just stop there. Don't stop with it works. Don't stop with something from 2005. Just make a little bit of effort and try to do things slightly better. I see, Paul. It looks like you want to add something to it, please.
No, it's just I'm just laughing because it's true, because
Yeah.
people that's never change. It's
Yeah.
simple as that. There was at the start of my book, I called a blog by Graham Robinson, "The Call to Arms,"
Oh yeah.
where he said people got, they learned in the year 2000. They were consultants. They learned how to do it, and just stay the same forever.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. But I think right now, maybe not today, but I think we're closing on the time. I think when luck is gonna start running out for some people, especially who never went beyond classic ABAP, I'm definitely seeing this in my line of work. We basically have no use almost of purely classic and ABAP developers anymore. You need to know ABAP prep, ideally, at least of data development in some way. And if you don't, I think you're going to be in really big trouble pretty soon. So we've been talking about this for a while, and it was maybe okay in 2016, 18, but I think we're getting there when it's not going to be okay anymore. So on that bright note, so thank you so much.
Sunshine.
Yeah, thank you so much, Paul Hardy, for taking
Yes.
time in your morning in faraway Australia to talk to us and to our viewers and share your wisdom and your book plans. So folks, please buy the books, and especially the UI5 one written by Paul Waterman and Phil Cooley or some other guys that ChatGPT claims. so please help support authors so that we can keep getting more and better books and just share knowledge with each other. All right, so thank you so much, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Yes, bye bye, everybody. Bye.